Good morning, YouTube. Welcome to my book review of Natasha Preston's The Island, published February 28, 2023. It currently sits at a rating of 3.5 out of 5 on Goodreads. As of January 12th, 2024, which is when I completed this book and did the research, that's where the rating currently sits. I don't know if it changed or not. I don't know if it's higher. I don't know if it was lower. That's just where it's currently at now. Natasha Preston is a New York Times bestseller author of multiple books. Overall, I would rate this book a 2 out of 5 personally. I expected better from a best-selling author, but I'm not going to hold that against her personally. It's just a book. It wasn't really meant for me. I have some standards that, how do I put this nicely? I have standards for myself, and I am very rigid in what I do, so I do not hold that against the author, although there are some critiques of the writing that she did that I will be pointing out as I go along. Let's start with why this book isn't for me. Once again, I do not hold this against the author. If Natasha Preston is watching this, which I don't think she is, but if she is, don't take this personally. It's not personal, I promise. I just didn't like the book as much as I wanted to. I absolutely 300% hate present tense. I can tolerate first-person POV, but when you combine first-person POV with present tense, I absolutely loathe it. To tack on, I struggle to connect with the teenager lead. This book had all three, unfortunately. If you love present tense, first-person POV, and can connect with the teenage lead, then this might interest you. Unfortunately, that didn't interest me. The point of view we follow is a teenage girl named Paisley. She's got a strong YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram presence. She's referred to as Crime Girl and rose to fame living in the true crime sphere. She makes mention several times how rich she is and or how rich her parents are. Ava is TikTok famous for dancing and beauty tips and tricks. She's characterized as spoiled, rotten, and out of touch with reality. Topping it off is her brutal honesty. She has a slightly smaller following than Will. Will is a rival beauty blogger with a bigger audience than Ava. The closest comparison I could offer would be James Charles, although physical descriptions might differ between book and James Charles. It's just whenever I was reading about Will, all I could envision was a James Charles, if that helps. Although minus the accusations. These are your influencers, the people you're supposed to care about. I want to point out that each character is rich or has rich parents. This is a bigger issue to me because rich teenagers do not make a great POV, nor was there truly proper content creator diversity. Whereas the content creator who has poor parents and is helping pay the bills by being famous. The humble, maybe 20-something-year-old creator who somehow hooked a huge audience. Why only rich teenagers? I feel as if the story lost narrative and characterization opportunities. Just think of the possibilities. You have a mixed crowd of a teenager, a 20-something-year-old, maybe a 30-year-old. Maybe you got like this younger creator, right? Like who's like 15, who has like 1 million followers because they're famous or something. Just think of how much of a mixed crowd that could have been and how much more interesting the story could have been instead of having all the influencers be like famous teenagers. It lost the narrative opportunity, and this is one of the reasons why I knocked a star off the book. This is why I gave it 2 out of 5 instead of like 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5. Moving on to the background characters, we have the billionaire Malcolm Wyatt, Camilla Jenkins is his personal assistant, Kenna, Gibson, and Reeve. Kenna is the cook. She's really good at her job, apparently. Gibson operated the boat that supposedly could hold 60 people ferrying across the mainland and the island. And then there's Reeve. I couldn't quite figure out what Reeve was. I figured he's just another general random employee. The location is Jagged Island, an amusement park for rich people who can afford $6,000 a person for 3 nights. An island that can be seen and reached from the mainland. Wood and stone with gargoyles is basically the aesthetic that we are greeted with by this island. I don't like amusement parks. I don't like roller coasters. I don't like heights. I don't like deep water. This place would be a nightmare for me. This is also why I don't think this book was really for me. So I don't really, once again, blame the author for anything. This is just a preference that I had. This is something that I struggle to deal with, and it doesn't interest me. But I liked the book cover. I saw the book cover. I read the synopsis, and when I bought this as a Christmas present for my mother, and she gave it back to me after she was done reading it. She said she read it in like 2 days or something to that effect. She said I could read it, and since she asked me to read it, I read it, and I kind of regret reading it because this is, and I don't. First impressions do have a little bit of meaning for me because my money is precious, and I'm not going to waste it on a book I don't like or an author I don't like. So if I don't like their first work, I'm more than likely not going to purchase a second book by them. But moving on. I couldn't connect at all with the characters. That made me careless when they started dying. I know that makes me sound like a bad person, but I really need to connect with the characters to really feel for them if they're going through something. And that is just me. I read to escape, but I also read to enjoy and connect. And unfortunately, I just couldn't connect with any of these characters. But Muse, the plot, surely the plot is better than the characters. It was okay. This is a plot-driven book, not a character-driven book. It delivered on that well enough that it earned 2 stars. In fact, I think it's such a plot-driven book that I can't argue it even being a character-driven book. The characters are just there. They're in the book. That's it. I took off 3 stars because the characterization and plot contrivances and conveniences annoyed me. There were quite a few. It was ridiculous. This is where the spoilers-free section stops. I am not sparing the audience any longer, so trim back now if you don't want spoiled. Bye-bye. The plot kicks off after the first person is discovered dead. Prior to that, we have Paisley's introduction, where she gushes over her brand new car, an online presence popularity, and manipulates her way into attending Jagged Island without a parental escort. Then the character's background information is info dumped on the boat trip to Jagged Island, and then the lackluster introduction to this amusement park island takes place. The kids ride the rides on the first day, drain their phone batteries, and then the second day rolls around. At this point, our first casualty happens. Are you prepared for who dies first? Any guesses? Any takers? I'll give you a moment to think. Just have fun. Take a guess. Out of the names that I provided you, think for a moment. Is it Ava or Will, the beauty bloggers? Is it James, the movie buff? Or Liam, the gamer? Paisley, the crime girl? Ooh, or Harper, book talk girl? What's your pick? Alright, now I give you enough time to think and dwell and wonder. It's Will, a beauty blogger, the first one to go down. Will had promised Paisley to sneak out after dark to meet up with her on day 1 to see the island after dark. Paisley shows up. Will does not. She explores the island bravely, gets spooked, and then comes back uneasy, feeling like she had been followed, although she hadn't seen anyone. Day 2 rolls around. Will is assumed to be sleeping in, and the others want to ride the rides and enjoy their time, so they obviously let the teenage boy sleep in. After enough day passes, Will hasn't been seen. Everybody starts looking for him. There's a storm scheduled to roll in, a bad one. So they can't spend too much time looking for Will. Unfortunately, they do find Will before the storm strikes, and it is Paisley, and by accident or on purpose, his body is found in a cart, a food cart to be specific, stuffed in there by the killer. There is some damage to his chest, so it is assumed that he was slashed or stabbed to death with a sharp object. At this point, Paisley and the others freak out. Plot contrivances and conveniences will happen frequently and stupidly. Will is the first to drop, and the second is soon to drop. The storm rolls in, as promised, and traps him on the island for the moment. The type of storm that can down trees and cause flooding in areas that are not prepared for it. The game of splitting up and freaking out begins. This annoys me a lot. I don't like this in scary movies. I like it even less in books. Use your brains, people. I can't say more. James is stabbed while with Harper, Ava, Paisley, Camilla, and Reeve. The lights go out. James is stabbed. Lights come back on. James is discovered dead, and Reeve is discovered gone. The other half of the group, Gibson, Liam, and Malcolm, are trying to repair internet access, which had been previously severed. Cell phone access has been jammed. That's the assumption anyway. And that is where we go further into more splitting up and freaking out. This is part of why I knock stars off. No one is doing the things that even the most panicked individuals in this type of situation would do. The plot could have been cut in half if the writing had been improved, which tells me that this book hadn't been that well thought out. This book in general seems to be based on extremely bad decision making. And now don't get me wrong, when one is in a situation where you're being hunted down and killed, I imagine that you are not thinking with your best brain. But survival instincts should kick in. And teenagers are connected to their phones like a lifeline. So I can't be sold this lie that they're just going to let their cell batteries die and not try to find the charger and huddle in a room with enough plugs to charge their phones. Even if they can't get cell access, I just can't buy that. It's stupid. It's stupid to believe. It's stupid to envision. There was a better way to create this plot point without being so stupid about it. And once again, this is not a dig at Natasha Preston. This is just, it was stupidly written. All right, that's it. Phone batteries are dead or dying. The internet is down because someone cut the wires. A jammer prevents cell signal on the island. A big enough jammer that you should notice it. Nothing small. Your first instinct is to charge the phone, right? I mean, that would be mine. Like, hey, we're being hunted by a killer. My battery's at 10%. Let's go get my phone charger so we can charge this just in case we get cell service again. Or, hey, this phone can act as a light or recording device. Or we can take pictures with this of the killer and have proof. At least if we die, there will be proof on this phone if it's ever found. But no, they do not. So, charge your stupid phone just in case, right? No, these characters do not do that. Teenage people with a internet presence and a following who thrive and make money off of that internet presence are not charging their phone. That's the first thing these type of people would do. They would charge their phone. I apologize for harping on this point. I will be moving on from it, but it's so stupid. Could have been so much better writing. Alright, but what don't they do? Retrieve phone chargers to charge their phones. That would have been the smart thing to do. That would have been the most basic first thing to do, even if you're panicking. find safety, charge phone. At one point, Paisley and Gibson see the jammer. They are literally close enough that they could restore cell communication capability by destroying it. The killer is between them and the jammer. One could distract the killer while the other destroys the jammer. Not that hard. You know what? You could have thrown this jammer into the goddamn ocean. You could have carted it around or something. You could have done something with it. You don't run away from the jammer when it's literally within arm's reach. But no. Gibson and Paisley argue their way into returning to the group so they can help the others and come back for the jammer, even though the jammer is portable. I repeat, the jammer is portable. The killer knows that they are looking for it. You are within arm's reach of this thing. Why did you not try to destroy it there? Why did you not try to double tap the killer when you had the chance? Knock him out, distract him, tie him up. I can understand not wanting to go physically near him, but you could distract him in a meaningful manner and then get the jammer and move it. You could disable it. You could figure it out later. But they didn't do that. This is another stupid writing point. Like, it's almost like this needed to happen so the rest of the plot could happen. This book, if it was shorter and better written, I would have put aside my differences with first-person POV and present tense, and I would have given it a 4-star. But these choices are just stupid. Anyway, Paisley and Gibson return to the group with the promise to come back for the jammer, after seeing the paranoid ski-masked killer pacing around the area it was in. Let that sink in. Blink and smack your forehead. Just smell the stupid. I don't care how old you are. You know the jammer is preventing cell signal. You know that the jammer is preventing communication your way off the island and getting help to you. I can't see how this plot decision is justified. I can't. It's so stupid. Do you feel the stupid in this writing? Because I do. I feel like this is lazy. I don't feel like this should have come from a New York Times best-selling author. I feel like this book was written as a cash grab almost by the way that it's been done. Like the stupidity in it it wasn't worth the money for me. But I got it from my mother as a Christmas present, so she liked it well enough. And this is her book, and I'm going to give it right back to her, so I don't have to keep it. That's the good news. Anyway, moving on. Kenna is found dead in the haunted house, her throat slit. It's assumed she's victim number 2 or 3, depending on how you judge a throat slitting versus a chest stabbing. I don't know how easy it is to slice a person's throat. I don't know how hard it is to stab a person in the chest. I don't. So Kenna is either victim 2 or 3. James is the other victim. Will is victim number 1. Kenna is 2 or 3. James is 2 or 3. That's our pecking order so far of the dead characters. After Kenna is found, Camilla dies next. She's seen trying to reason with the killer before she is stabbed to death. Paisley witnesses this. This is how we know about it. I forget who was with Paisley at that time. I'm honestly not even bothered to look in the book to find out. I don't care. That's how much I feel about this book. I don't care to know the particular small detail of who was with Paisley when she saw the killer kill Camilla. Gibson dies off screen later. Reeve mentions it to Paisley towards the end of the book. Gibson doesn't have much of a presence in the book except for helping Reeve. Reeve seems to have a bigger presence. Camilla has a mild presence. Kenna is maybe mentioned once or twice. I don't even think she makes a physical appearance Kenna is just the literal definition of a background character, not even worth the attention. That leaves us with Ava, Liam, Reeve, Malcolm, and Paisley. That's your roster of survivors to pick from to determine who the killer is, if the killer is one of them. Now, this book could have infinitely improved if the killer isn't one of them, but it was hinted at being one of them. But that's not the case with this plot. Killer is one of them. I'll leave it up to you to decide who the killer is. If you've read this book, well, then you probably try to pick out clues who it was, and maybe it's easy to figure out who it is. I don't pick apart mystery thriller books to find the details before I get to the end. I'm usually one of those people who skips right to the end to read the end before I go back to read the beginning of the book. I can handle being spoiled, in air quotes. So, after deciding the jammer isn't worth it, and the jammer is now a lost cause because, hey, it disappeared again, and Gibson and Paisley didn't destroy it when they had the chance. Ah, the stupidity. What a great smell. They decide to start a fire to alert the mainland because you can see the island from the mainland. And fire draws attention. The killer snags Ava and does manage to kill her. Stabs her to death in front of Harper and Paisley as they're running for their lives. Now, at this point, I believe this would be the point that Harper... Our POV lead now begins to realize who the killer is, and with a little bit of lead up, the killer is exposed willingly by himself. Take your guesses. 1, 2, 3. It's Liam. Was that your original guess? It's Liam. The gamer influencer who likes violent games. I'll give all of you 2 guesses as to what this could be a callback to, a reference to, or how this book could have been influenced by. Yep. If you've guessed it, Scream. Now, I grew up at Scream. I love the movies. I was hooked. The idea of 2 killers was just like all the rage back then. It was just this huge surprise when it hits you. And I've always loved Scream. It mocked the horror genre. And then, obviously, it played into it. And now it's being replicated. And the series has been continued, and I've watched everything Scream related. I have some favorites in the series. But, back to this book. It feels tropish, stupid, and cheap. No shade against the author, but they definitely could have done better than this. Why Liam? Why not Malcolm? Why not Camilla? Why not, Paisley? You could have picked a different killer. Why did it have to be the violent gamer, right? Why him? But moving on. Now, before I go too hard on Natasha Preston, I have to hand it to this book. I have never hated a billionaire more. For those of you who've read the book, well, you already know. For those of you who haven't. Long story short, Liam is Camilla Jenkins' son. Camilla Jenkins being the personal assistant to Malcolm Wyatt, the billionaire. Liam is Malcolm's nephew. Did you make that connection yet? Camilla and Malcolm are brother and sister. Camilla is older than Malcolm. The parents or grandparents, I don't remember, and I don't really care to dig around in the book to recall. Camilla was rejected because she was a girl. They didn't want to give the millions to a girl. It was even said by Liam, I believe, that Camilla wouldn't have been born if she hadn't been born first. Now, Malcolm screwed around with his life while Camilla went to college and did something with her life. She came back to work middle management at the family company. Well, Malcolm became the rich playboy idiot trust fundy who probably had a body count and who knows, maybe some bastard children out there that he doesn't even know about. Steady, responsible Camilla, who ended up getting pregnant to someone and then that deadbeat running off and leaving her with the kid, versus this idiot of a guy who's just screwing around and doing nothing in his life. I absolutely abhor the way that Camilla was treated in this book by her parents slash grandparents, by her brother, Malcolm. In fact, I understand Liam's hatred for Malcolm. It is one of the main reasons why I actually think this book could have been improved with a slight tweak that would have been very tropish and cliche, but I think it would have been a perfect fit. And I'll go into that later. But anyway, Malcolm doesn't even recognize his own nephew or recognize the middle name that his nephew is using to get onto the island. Liam is not Liam's full name. Robert Liam Jenkins is his full name. And it is discovered earlier in the book that Robert is the supposed killer, the alleged killer. And this is what Paisley, Crime Girl, operates off of and kind of just spreads around liberally without any kind of justification other than she can lip read a little bit and that's it. Anyway, well, to layer on why I hate Malcolm, he pays her a secretary wage, but uses her as a personal assistant who runs multiple businesses and manages his billions. His billions, because when their parents or grandparents died, they gave the millions to him and gave her nothing but the middle management job that she already had. And then he went and turned it around and just promoted her eventually, an extra $10,000, as Liam puts it, to be his personal assistant. Yeah, what a lovely family dynamic there. You know what, Liam? Stab your uncle. Stab him 100 fucking times for Camilla. Please. He deserves it. He does not deserve to breathe. Ever. So, to Natasha Preston, I will grant her. She made a great villain for a billionaire. She made the personal assistant this very, she made the personal assistant an individual you wanted to empathize with. It's even mentioned earlier in the book how Malcolm mistreats his personal assistant. He has nothing nice to say to her. He doesn't say thank you. He doesn't say please, barking orders. He doesn't even treat her like a sister. He just treats her like a piece of property. And she just goes along with it. Which is why I'm mad at Camilla, too. Because, as a mom, I have kids. I would do anything for my kids. In fact, if anyone even hurt my kids, I'd probably go to prison for it. Because, let's just say, let's leave that there, yeah? And Camilla, she was a committed mother to Liam. I assume she stayed a single mother for a long time. There is no mention of a lover or anything like that after the deadbeat left. But Camilla stays in this middle management job, managing all these millions, multiple companies, when she doesn't have to. And she subjects Liam to this environment where he's around all this money, but he's treated like he doesn't have a right to exist or to be acknowledged, because he's a bastard born child who isn't even acknowledged by his family, his blooded family. I don't even want to call them his family because they don't act like a family to him. As far as creating monsters go, this is a good starting point. You want to create a monster out of a person. You give them a miserable background. make him empathetic. Liam was made very empathetic to me by the fact that his blooded family treated him like shit. And I'm not surprised that he stabbed his uncle to death with such rage that I'm just not surprised. In fact, I support him doing that. I agree wholeheartedly with what he did. I don't care if that makes me look like a bad person. People like Malcolm Wyatt shouldn't be breathing. They're assholes. They're taking advantage of people. They're abusing people. And Camilla, I'm not trying to victim blame here. I'm not. But as a mother, she should have just looked Malcolm in the eye, told him, no, you manage your own companies or find someone better. And she could have marketed herself and skyrocketed to something beyond a secretary wage at a different company. She could have done anything. She could have made more than a secretary wage having that kind of background, and she chose not to. Moving on. Liam double crosses his own mother and has an accomplice. Another Scream thing. Yes, I know, so tropish, so cliche, so stupid, boring. To me. I mean, if this is your thing, by all means. But I don't think this should be in every piece of media after Scream. But apparently it's becoming much more popular. Alright, can you guess who the accomplice is? I'll give you a moment. Just remember, at this point in the book, Gibson is still assumed to be alive. Reeve is assumed to be alive because the bodies haven't been found yet. Liam has been introduced as the villain, so we remove him from the list. And Ava's dead. So that leaves us with Harper, Paisley, your POV, who assumedly get every detail of every single passing second from. Yeah, so take your pick between Harper, Gibson, and Reeve of who his accomplice is. Oh, stretch that tiny, tiny mind. 1, 2, 3. It's Harper. His accomplice is Harper, Book Talk Girl. I'm not particularly mad about this, but it wasn't particularly interesting to me. In fact, I think he could have had a better accomplice that would have made a bit more sense than Harper. But, gotta have a twist. Don't know why. Everything needs a twist. If something is well written, you don't need a twist, okay? If you're afraid of exposing your twist, because it would give away the whole story, it's not well written. All right? I'm just going to say that now. I believe M. Night Shyamalan, if I said that name wrong, I apologize, has a piece of writing or a piece of media called The Happening, and spoiler for that, where it is revealed that nature is killing people, but it's done so in a very weird way. Now, if you told me that was the twist from the beginning, I would have been like, okay. I still would have watched the movie. I still would have told you the movie was I guess it was okay. But I wouldn't have been mad about, like, that would not have ruined the movie for me. And I feel the same way about books. So I feel like Harper being the accomplice is just meh. Like, this could have been done better. Liam could have had a different accomplice. But anyway, complaints as they are. Reeve catches up with Paisley and Harper after they escape Liam, because Liam is more busy trying to kill his uncle, which, I do not blame him. Help is on the way. They can see the boat reaching the island, little by little. Liam closes the distance, and then Reeve shares with Harper and Paisley that Gibson is dead. And this is where a clue that Harper is the accomplice is dropped. But you know what? The clues for who the killer could have been were dropped here or there. I will say that was laid out in a neat manner and it was accounted for. I can't fault that at all. That was actually one of the stronger writing points in this. But aside from that, I don't have much praise. Liam basically corners them on the jetty. Harper turns from best friend of Paisley and becomes the enemy. And there is an ensuing cat fight between Harper and Paisley. So tropish, so stupid. This could have been done better. It could have been done better. And Reeve and Liam end up squaring up and basically punching it out in the last few pages. A fight for survival. I can't fault this last bit of the book. It was actually, one of the more realistic things. Like, you're cornered, you're going to fight for your life, you're going to do what you need to do. So, who lives and who dies? That is the important question as the book comes to a halt, a grinding halt. Who lives and who dies? Well, see, that's the problem. We don't know. We, the readers, don't know. Harper is stabbed with her own knife, and she ends up motionless on the dock. Reeve and Paisley celebrate a little bit early after Liam is motionless on the dock after getting punched into unconsciousness, it would seem. And then Liam jumps up and drags Paisley into the water with help feet away in a boat. Yes, you heard me correctly. The boat, with people who've come to help them, is feet away from the jetty. Liam drags Paisley into the water. That's how the book ends. Now, there's a lot of people who didn't like this ending. Me personally, I liked it. It was probably the best part of the book for me. And not because it was the end of the book, but just because you have that kind of uncertainty about how is this going to play out? What are the consequences of this going to be? How's this going to look on Reeve? Is anybody going to believe Reeve? So it's very interesting. It leaves a lot of doors open. That's why I liked it. That's why I appreciated it. My apologies. It's only 9:39 in the morning. Basically, the ending reminded me of the lady in And the Tiger, or the lady or the tiger. But that one had a very open ending too. And that's just what this reminded me of. So how could this have been better? Instead of Scream callbacks, we could have had Camilla and Liam teaming up. Cliche? Sure. But it would have made sense to the plot. Maybe Camilla gets cold feet and Liam doesn't. Maybe Liam gets cold feet and Camilla doesn't. Either way, Liam and Harper being the killers and their motive basically to, screw over Malcolm. Well, Harper doesn't fit into that at all. Liam does, but Harper doesn't. In fact, Harper being in contact with Liam for a while before coming to the island, although Harper had strict parents and everything was controlled, is like a callback to, I believe, Scream 4 with Sam. And I just it it felt cheap to me. Like you could tell where the influences came from and where certain types of ideas were being stolen from. I'm not gonna call it um it feels cheap to me. Feels like it could have been written better if it was given enough thought, and it doesn't seem like it was given a great deal of thought. Furthermore, Twilight had better immersion than this book. Hunger Games probably has better immersion than this book, although I haven't read the Hunger Games, nor do I intend to, because they're in first person and likely in present tense. And as I've said before, I don't like that combination. I could tolerate first person, maybe. Present tense, no. And if you combine both, I absolutely loathe it. So, no, I'm not going to read Hunger Games. But I'm going to say that Hunger Games probably has a better immersion than this book. The descriptions were either great or horrible. The dialogue, as much as I love dialogue, there was too much of it. Like this book seemed to hinge on dialogue or running away from the killer and more dialogue. Oh, and by the way, you found a dead body. Good luck. Here, deal with some shock. Oh, look, you're running again and talking again. That's basically what this book was. The characters were flat, empty, and acted like badly written talking heads. It's a popcorn read in an airport while you wait for the layover. A book you can't quite get absorbed into, so you don't really fear missing your flight, but a book that's mildly interesting, so you're not completely bored. You know what I mean? That's what this book is. It's nothing more, nothing less. This is why I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. And I am happy to give it back to my mother. I did buy her the book that was teased in the back of this one, The Fear, because she expressed interest in it. But I personally have no interest in reading another teenage POV main character type book, especially if it's in first person and or present tense. I just, no. I'm far too old for that. That's not my demographic. I have no interest in it. And as much as I like the covers were oddly very pretty to look at, strangely enough. That's why I looked at it in the first place. Um, I'm not going to waste money on a product just to hate review it. But I figured since I spent like a week reading this thing, because I was reading it in small chunks, I'm going I'm going to express my opinion on the subject because it was a waste of my time. It wasn't a waste of my money because my mother enjoyed the book, but it was a waste of my time, and I wanted to express myself with how much I didn't like the book. But I liked certain parts of it. And had I been a teenager, which, that ship has sailed for a decade at the very least. That ship has sailed. I might have enjoyed this book. But me personally, as a mom, as I probably would have related better to Camilla in the book than say Paisley, uh, or even Reeve or Gibson, who were basically hinted at being like 20 or early 20s. Um, I could have related better to those characters than I could have to Paisley, Ava, Will, James, Liam, or Harper. Like I I couldn't relate to any of them because of the age thing, because it was everybody came from wealth. There was this lack of socioeconomic diversity, and yes, some of the characters are mentioned as coming from a poor family. But then you get into these characters and how they spend their wealth, and you don't see them supporting their families, or they're characters who come from wealthier families So they don't really understand the impact of money in the economy as it is. And this was written in 2023. So we can't even say this was like, a boom year, right? Pre-COVID. This book was published in 2023. There are a lot of culture references. Squid Games, Britney Spears. Um, there are a few more sprinkled in there. But it literally gives us this time frame, and then it goes on to talk to have these people just take their wealthy viewpoint and skew it in the direction away from your most common set of readers, who are not going to be the wealthy people. They're going to be the lower class to middle income people. Wealthy people have better things to spend their money on than this book. The uh, the class that you most want to appeal to is going to be the class that is going to be bigger. Now, the bigger class is going to be the middle class and the poorer class. And there was no socioeconomical diversity in that regard. Paisley mentions how her parents were poor at one time, but then they hit it big. Their investments paid off. You know what? Good for her parents. Great, fantastic. And then she mentions about how she has 500,000 followers, and she earns enough money from her internet presence to pay for her own college, and how her brother is in college, I believe Yale or Princeton or one of those schools. I don't care. I do not care to look up the detail. That's how much I don't care about this book. Um, she mentions these facts as if they're like just an everyday kind of thing. And I understand, like, coming from a POV, like, yeah, she earned that money. She earned those followers. Good for you, girl. Spend that money how you want. But when you're going on about how you got like a brand new BMW and your brother's was like 2 years old and he's so jealous, my empathy for you goes out the window. Like, fuck you. I do not care. And maybe this is just me being mad that, like, those with money are taking wowed advantage of those without money in the current economy. And inflation is going up, and people are, especially the newer generations, like, this is a huge issue with the newer generations. Like, you have all these people with, like, all this money buying up houses and turning them into Airbnbs and so on and so forth. You have inflation of everything going on. You have healthcare that is stupidly expensive. And this book does take place in the United States. So when I mention healthcare, I mention it in the US centric perspective. All right. So Paisley, coming from this place of privilege, is not something I'm going to connect to. If anything, it's going to be something that I actively reject, because that's not the type of character I want to relate to. In fact, Malcolm being like this bad person, yeah, perfectly fits in what I think of a billionaire. I'm not going to argue with that. But then you got these teenagers who are just coming from a place of wealth, and then it's so jarring because they don't grasp, they don't understand. And this is part of why this book isn't for me. One, present tense. I absolutely fucking loathe it. Two, first person. I don't like first person as a rule. I've tried to write it. I don't like it. It's hard to do. It's very hard to really diversify the information that's being spread out. It's hard to do. And I cannot stress this enough. I have a lot of respect for Natasha Preston writing in first person. I have a lot of respect for Stephanie Meyer, writing in first person, and anybody else who writes in first person. I personally don't want to do it, can't do it. I've tried it, and I have no interest in trying it again. Present tense, first person, rich teenage POV. does nothing for me. One, I'm not a teenager anymore. I'm not even close to that age. And two, I'm in a socioeconomic group that is so far removed from like that level of wealth of like, oh, I can pay for my own college and not have debt afterwards. Like, please, shut the fuck up. Okay? Little Miss Privilege, shut the fuck up. I don't fucking care. I've struggled my entire life with financial instability and issues, and there's a lot of anxiety that I personally have that centers around that. So, like Paisley going off, it was just, it was annoying. It triggered me. Um, I liked her even less when she started talking about money. And I know that seems very petty, but this is just my personal experience. So I suppose I'm going to include several pictures of things that seemed actually, no, we're going to go over it. In closing, there are a few nitpicks where it feels like the editor was sleeping on the job, or Natasha Preston was just trying to pad out the word count on her book. And I'm just going to go over those real quickly. Her skin is dark and her afro is tied on top of her head. There is no need to mention skin color when afros are mentioned. It is automatically assumed afros are exclusive to black people. Perms are something else entirely. They are not afros. And therefore, the first part of the sentence was unnecessary. Also, having ridden a ferry before, no, reading will not help with the nausea. Sorry, Harper, you're out of luck. Page 12. A carved gargoyle, or is it meant to be a carved gargoyles? Now, this is the gargoyles on top of the hotel. Or is it just one big gargoyle? I don't know. But I feel like that's a typo that's very important, especially if you're trying to establish the description of the island. A hotel having just one gargoyle might look stupid. Having multiple, a lot better for the aesthetic. But that's just me. Page 16. Shouldn't staff uniforms vibe with the Gothic architecture? Navy and red don't seem to match the aesthetic the billionaire who spent millions on this island is trying to achieve. If you're trying to go for a Gothic vibe overall, you should make the uniforms to match. It shouldn't just be navy and red. But that's just my personal opinion on the subject. If I was a billionaire, that's what I would do. I would completely stick to the Gothic vibe and swing with that. This is a small nitpick that really is me being petty. So Paisley describes the ceiling in the hotel like a bowl of spaghetti. Now, this is in character for a teenager. I don't expect them to be able to accurately describe the way I can't even say the word, intricately designed ceiling would look like. But reading it, it feels really weird and really stupid. I'm kind of conflicted on this. Maybe I'm being petty, but it is what it is. Page 21. A massive fireplace that's taller than me. So how tall is Paisley? This isn't very helpful as a description, especially a first-time description for the setting. Also, don't be lazy and mention specifics for the alcohol. At least she mentions like a big bar of like alcohol, take your pick, everything's here. Okay, what's everything? Show that you did your research. I know teenagers can identify alcohol. Teenagers drink. They break into their parents' locked cabinets. They're exposed to alcohol frequently, if not by ads, then by just media. So show your research, please. I walk around my suite with the four-poster emperor bed and black bathtub. Okay, this is from page 24. Is Paisley literally carrying those around the suite? No, that's obvious. This is a very awkwardly worded sentence. In fact, the whole description of her rooms is just badly done. If you're selling me gothic architecture, please sell it with so much better description, even if it's out of character for Paisley to notice, because if you want the character immersed. This is why I don't think Paisley was a good POV character. Also, spanning the height of the room and house large panes of glass. House large panes of glass. It took my brain like 3 tries to even process what that was trying to say. There's a need to word things better here. This is just ridiculously simple and confusing on a first read, especially when you're reading it in first person. Page 30. Paisley is experiencing a weird dissociation and discomfort to having a parasocial connection to a victim of murder. Now that's really relatable for me because I went through an unfortunate circumstance where I discovered a dead body at work, and it was one of those people who I would have worked with and would have been acknowledging at least once or twice a year at the very least, and it is so I related to her on that particular part of the book. It was disturbing for me. I didn't expect to have feelings in that direction, and I completely understand where Paisley is coming from. It's a very uncomfortable thing to think about and talk about sometimes. Um, yeah, I'm sorry, Paisley. You didn't deserve that. Page 31. You do not need to specify that the trees are real unless you've already specified that fake trees exist on the island. I repeat, you only need to specify that trees are real only when you specify that fake trees exist in the same space. Does that make sense? So mentioning that the trees were real on the island was padding out word count again. That was on page 31. I think my biggest gripe with this book is that I went into it hoping for this really interesting story, and the cover caught me, and the synopsis caught me, and I was taken back by it being in present tense and first person, which made me not like it already. But then you add in a rich teenage POV, and all I think of is a whiny, snotty little brat who doesn't have any life experience, and I don't want to read about that, especially after I have life experience, and I'm older now, so I think for future me, I'm just going to start reading about like 18 and up type characters instead of 18 and below. Preferably probably starting 20s, to be honest. I'm out of that age demographic now. I don't care. I tried rereading the first book in the Harry Potter series, and well, to say the least, it was a struggle. I intended to reread the series as an adult because when they first came out, I was aging alongside Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson, and it, the books were pumped out year after year. J.K. Rowling was delivering, and trying to get back into that mindset of that young child is difficult because I no longer relate to that. And the same applies to this book. I don't relate to a 16-year-old. I don't relate to a 17-year-old. I don't even relate to an 18-year-old. I'd argue that even coming from the perspective of a 20-year-old, it would still sound like whining to me. Because I've been through so much personally that I don't care about those types of characters anymore. And this is not on Natasha Preston. This is on me. I can't even be mad because I bought the book as a Christmas gift for my mother, and she's getting it back today. So, yay! I'm so happy. But I do plan on giving Natasha Preston one more chance. Maybe if I can find one of her books that don't have a teenage POV in it, maybe I can enjoy the present tense and first person POV, which I'm assuming all her books are written in at this point, because when an author chooses a POV, that tends to be the only POV that my apologies. When an author chooses a tense to write in, that tends to be the only tense they use for their works. And my empirical In my experience, that is how that has always happened. So I will give her one more chance. If she disappoints me again, I'm never buying another book from her for myself. And I don't think even if my mother asked me to read another one of her books that I would. But my mother seemed to enjoy the first one. If my mother enjoys the second one, which is The Fear, then I'll get my mother another one from the list, and maybe my mother will have the whole collection. Who knows? But overall, thank you for the material to read and become maybe slightly immersed in Natasha Preston. It was an interesting attempt. I've been trying to get back into reading, and unfortunately, you were just one of those authors alongside Ty Hutchinson and one of the billionaire romance novels I tried to read when I was trying to get back into reading again. It just did not go well, and I think I'm trying to find where I belong in the book world again. I have such a toxic relationship with reading and writing that I need to balance that out again, and I am a different person, and I need to acknowledge that. But until then, I do plan on finishing actually, Sycamore Row, um, by John Grisham, and I am thoroughly enjoying that one. I could tell you all the details. I couldn't even tell you who the influencers were in The Island, and I just got done reading it. But Sycamore Row, I'm enjoying. So maybe legal thrillers are more my thing now. Who knows? Uh, till my next review, hopefully that one will be much more positive. Goodbye, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you know that you're loved, wanted, and that you deserve a hug.